Welcome to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast, brought to you by big4accountingfirms.com and the Big Four Accounting Firms YouTube channel. Make sure to check out our website, big4accountingfirms.com, and make sure to subscribe to our YouTube channel. And there'll be a link to both of those in the show notes, so make sure to check those out. In today's podcast, I wanted to discuss something you can immediately do to greatly improve your interview. And it's only one thing that you have to do, and it's related to expectations. And all you have to do is raise your expectations. You should raise your expectations of yourself and of your interviewer. And that's it. All right, goodbye, everybody. No, I'm just kidding. But really, expectations shape our first meetings with people. Think of it yourself. Like whether you've heard good things or bad things about people, it shapes how you'll react to them. And this is true for me. This is probably true for you. If you hear bad things about somebody, like it shapes how you think of that person going forward. If it's something bad, you probably won't trust that person with information. You'll be standoffish. And if you heard good things, then you'll probably be trusting of that person, be more vulnerable. You'll be happier. You'll be nicer. So before you go on an interview, just raise your expectations. I mean, going on an interview is like going on a date, right? Both people in the interview get those first date jitters. You get them because you don't know that much about each other, but you do know a little bit about each other because you know the person that you're interviewing with works for the Big Four, whichever firm you choose to interview with, and they know a little bit about you from your application or your resume. The reason I say to raise your expectations is because I read this book and it had a study in it, and it said there's a study where interviewers rated applicants. This is interview applicants from 1 to 9 before interviewing them, obviously 9 being a better rating. And they just rated this based on materials that they had at hand. And then after that, the people conducting the study taped interviews over 3-month periods, and they listened back to the tapes. And they had to go through the tapes, and they came up with a system to rate the interviews, based on like positive interview style, positive questions. And what they found, and they obviously found because I'm talking about it, is that recruiters that developed positive impressions before the interview had a big impact on the candidate's likelihood of getting a job. So if they read the resume and had positive expectations going into the interview, the candidate had a better chance of getting the job. What that means is that you should get your resume looking pretty good. The format should be really good. It should look clean. It should have some relevant experience or, your schoolwork that you've had on there so they can get us positive expectations. But also, when you show up to interview, you need to show up on time. You need to show up looking really professional. Obviously, the more professional you can look, the better positive impression you'll have. And the expectations of the interviewer in that study before the interview predicted the interviewer's use of positive style, and it created a warmer, friendlier environment. And this helped make the interviewees feel more comfortable. So if they have positive expectations going into it, it'll make you feel more comfortable. And the interviewers that developed positive expectations before the interview spent more time selling the company to the candidate versus asking really hard, tough questions. So this is something you can use as well. If you're in the middle of an interview and the person just keeps on asking you harder and harder questions, then you know that you should try and connect with them. Maybe you have a scowl on. Maybe you should smile. You know it might not be going the best. But if the interviewer is selling you on why you should work for PwC, KPMG, Deloitte, EY, whatever, then you know the interview is probably going well. So that's something else you can learn from this advice I'm giving you. And expectations go both ways. So hopefully you can raise your interviewer's expectations of yourself by having a good resume. But you should also raise your own expectations of your interviewer. No matter what you know about them, go in with the positive thoughts about them, view them in a good light, because that way you're going to be in a more positive light when you go into your interview. But the expectations also go for yourself. You should raise your own expectations of yourself. Don't think about things that you might be lacking, whether it's in your resume or your experience. Don't think about those things. And it's hard to not think about something, so you're going to need to replace it with something else. So instead, you should think positive things about yourself. And make sure to think those thoughts before your interview and then highlight them during your interview. Another thing to think about is when you label something as a threat, it limits your ability to problem solve and be creative. You become more rigid in your thinking. So What this means is don't label your lack of experience or maybe other shortcomings that you might have as a threat. And we all do that because it's really the fear of not having enough experience that threatens your ability to get a job. And so what you do is you kind of freeze up and you focus on that and you worry about it. But if you label it just like as a challenge, something that you can solve, then it's more positive, and you can solve it by thinking positive things about yourself. Think about the best things that you do. Maybe it's your communication, maybe it's your use of technology. Just think of the best things that can help you in a job. Just think of the most positive things you can about yourself before your interview and during your interview, and it'll really help you out. Because when you expect the worst, a lot of the times that's what you get. So you need to raise your expectations in order to have a good interview, and raise your expectations of your interviewer and of yourself. So thanks for listening to the Big Four Accounting Firms podcast today. Make sure to check out big4accountingfirms.com and Big Four Accounting Firms YouTube. And the links to both of those are going to be in the show notes. Thanks for listening.